Hello, and welcome to Theories of Crime and Justice. I'm Danielle McCartney, and today we're looking at social learning theories and how social learning theories explain the transmission of criminal behaviors and values, and how they can influence criminal justice policies. Social learning theory draws from sociology and psychology to help us understand how criminal values, ideas, and techniques are passed from one person to another. That is, these theories help us understand how someone learns to be criminal. We'll start with differential association theory by Edwin Sutherland. Differential association theory says that criminal behavior is learned through interaction with others. In particular, we learn criminal techniques, attitudes, and motives through personal groups and personal associations. Sutherland argued that criminal behavior is more likely to be learned depending on the frequency, duration, priority, and intensity of exposure to criminal techniques, attitudes, and motives. Frequency refers to how often someone is exposed to certain behaviors or influences. More frequent exposure to criminal behavior can increase the likelihood of learning and adopting these behaviors. Duration is the length of time spent in the presence of certain influences. Longer durations of exposure to criminal behaviors or attitudes can strengthen their influence on someone. Priority highlights the precedence or importance of the influential behavior in someone's life. Behaviors learned from primary groups like family at a young age often have a stronger impact. Intensity relates to the emotional or psychological impact of the influence. Intense experiences marked by strong emotional bonds or high-stakes situations can have a more profound effect on learning criminal behavior. Ronald L. Burgess and Ronald Akers expanded differential association theory by introducing the concept of differential reinforcement. This concept was inspired by behavioral psychology and behavior modification, especially the idea of rewards and punishments. If you've taken a psychology class and studied operant conditioning, differential reinforcement will sound familiar. Differential reinforcement is the idea that behaviors are more likely to be repeated if they are followed by favorable outcomes, that is, positive reinforcement, and are less likely to be repeated if the outcomes are unfavorable, that is, negative reinforcement. Positive reinforcement involves receiving something of value for a behavior, like getting money or approval. Negative reinforcement involves escaping something painful, like punishment. So, if someone is rewarded for engaging in criminal behavior, they're more likely to continue engaging in that criminal behavior. If they get punished or lose social status for engaging in criminal behaviors, then they're less likely to engage in them. Akers further built on these ideas to develop social learning theory, which incorporates elements such as imitation, discriminative stimuli, and specific mechanisms of reinforcement. Imitation is the process of copying behaviors observed in others. So a teenager starts shoplifting after observing their older sibling doing it and getting away with it. So they learn and adopt the behavior of shoplifting through observation. Social reinforcement also plays a role in this. Social reinforcement involves tangible or intangible rewards and punishments from society. When people imitate the behaviors of others, they often do so because they have observed the behavior being socially reinforced with approval, attention, or rewards from others within the social environment. Also, we learn that rules matter in some contexts and not in others. We get signals that a particular context matters for the rules. This illustrates the concept of discriminative stimuli. Discriminative stimuli are environmental cues that indicate the potential consequences for behavior. For example, most of us drive over the speed limit, but seeing a police officer makes many of us slow down. Akers highlighted several mechanisms of reinforcement, including positive, negative, direct, and vicarious reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is adding a desirable stimulus to increase a behavior. If a juvenile delinquent receives praise and acceptance from peers for vandalizing property, they are more likely to keep vandalizing property. Or on the positive side, say a former inmate gets a job after release as part of a rehabilitation program and earns a steady income. That can reinforce the benefit of maintaining lawful behavior for others. Negative reinforcement is removing an undesirable stimulus to increase a behavior. For example, a young person learns to use aggression to avoid bullying, removing the negative stimulus of being bullied. Or for a positive outcome, say a young offender participates in a juvenile diversion program and complies with its requirements. They may have their charges dropped or reduced. Direct reinforcement is learning through the direct consequences of one's own actions. So, if a burglar successfully breaks into a house and steals valuables, they directly gain, money or goods from the crime. A positive example might be an offender attending a drug treatment program instead of serving jail time. The direct improvement in health and well-being reinforces, hopefully, the decision to stay drug-free. Vicarious reinforcement is learning by observing the consequences of others' actions. A member of a criminal group observes another member being rewarded with money or status for successful illegal activities. That could then motivate them to engage in similar acts. Or say a delinquent observes peers who have turned away from crime and are now leading successful, rewarding lives. This could encourage the delinquent to also pursue positive change. But what I find most interesting about Aker's contributions to social learning theory is the idea of definitions. In this context, definitions are the personal attitudes or meanings that individuals attach to specific behaviors, if those behaviors are good or bad, and therefore if we should engage in such behaviors. Definitions can be general or specific. General definitions refer to overall beliefs about the law and morality. Specific definitions are justifications for particular behaviors in specific circumstances. This means that even though someone might usually follow the law, they might find reasons to break it in certain situations if they think there's a good reason for it. So imagine someone who generally believes in being environmentally responsible. That's a general definition. But decides to litter in a park because they see others doing it and the trash cans are overflowing. There are specific situations, that's a specific definition, that might change it. They might tell themselves it's not really littering under these specific circumstances, even though they generally support keeping the environment clean. This personal rule bending allows us to justify our bad behavior, littering in this context, even though it goes against our usual principles. According to Akers, definitions are the moral and ethical guidelines that people use to justify or condemn actions. They serve as a personal compass for behavior. Definitions are shaped by a variety of factors, including social interactions and experiences. After all, how we decide to follow or break society's rules really depends on how we define right and wrong for ourselves in different situations. Building on these ideas, let's discuss the techniques of neutralization. Remember, in Aker's framework, definitions are the attitudes or rationalizations that influence whether or not we engage in criminal or deviant acts. Techniques of neutralization are specific rationalizations or justifications that we might use to neutralize the moral bind of the law and society. They allow us to engage in deviant or criminal behavior without feeling guilt. These techniques essentially provide the definitions that make behavior acceptable in our own mind. In the 1950s, Gresham Sykes and David Matza included 5 techniques of neutralization as they were trying to explain how delinquents justified their deviant behavior. But the techniques are applicable in many different contexts. The 5 basic techniques are denial of responsibility. The individual believes that they were forced into the behavior by circumstances or were not in control of their actions. So an example could be if a hacker claims that they broke into a system not out of malice, but because they were compelled by the challenge and they couldn't resist testing their skills against the security measures. That is, they're not a bad person, and they're not really responsible for their wrongdoing. Denial of injury. The person thinks that their actions did not cause any real harm or damage. For example, some of my students illegally download movies and they say, well, big film studios make millions anyway, so their actions don't cause any real financial harm. Denial of the victim. The offender argues that the victim deserved whatever action the offender carried out. If a pickpocket rationalizes stealing a wallet by claiming that the wealthy victim can easily afford to replace the stolen money in cards, they're implying that the victim is not truly harmed, and then they're using the denial of the victim. Condemnation of the condemners. The deviant suggests that those who disapprove of their behavior have no right to do so, often because they're seen as hypocrites or the condemners are engaging in similar behaviors. So an employee caught embezzling funds from their company uses condemnation of the condemners if they argue that what they did is minor compared to the greedy and exploitative executives of the company. Appeal to higher loyalties. The individual justifies their behavior by claiming it was in service to a higher cause, like loyalty to a group or to a noble idea. For example, a gang member participates in illegal activities, but justifies it by saying that their actions support and protect their family of fellow gang members, placing loyalty above the law. These neutralizations show how we can drift into deviance or even criminal behavior, but still maintain a self-image of decency. Taken together, these are some pretty powerful rationales to engage in criminal behavior. I mean, think about the last time you did something dodgy. Did you use any of these techniques? Overall, the biggest strength of social learning theory is that it offers important perspectives on how individuals within groups learn from one another, which can explain patterns of behavior, such as how gang dynamics can influence criminal behavior. Social learning theory also makes intuitive sense, since all of us can think of times we've learned how to do something sketchy from someone we care about or see as an authority. But beyond just intuition, social learning theory has also been extensively tested, usually with positive results. For example, a 2010 meta-analysis, posted in the description, of social learning theory found strong support for the measures of differential association and definitions, but only modest support for differential reinforcement and modeling or imitation. However, for all of these strengths, social learning theory is not without limitations. First, it overemphasizes environmental influences. Social learning theories may not adequately account for individual psychological differences that affect behavior. These theories may struggle to explain spontaneous criminal acts that are not learned through social interaction or through observation. Social learning theories might not fully account for the impact of broader societal and cultural influences on behavior. In real-world settings, it's challenging to isolate and measure the specific effects of observed behaviors, reinforcements, or associations on individual actions. But even with these limitations, social learning theories have important policy implications that could prevent and address criminal behaviors effectively. Social learning theories suggest that early interventions can prevent the development of criminal behavior by promoting pro-social behaviors and attitudes. Correctional programs can be designed to replace criminal behaviors with socially acceptable ones, using positive reinforcements and teaching new skills. Policies that strengthen community structures can help reduce crime by creating positive social networks and reinforcing norms against criminal behavior. Implementing educational programs that teach the consequences of crime and the benefits of lawful behavior aligns with the tenets of social learning theories. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned a lot. If you want more information, please check the additional resources in the description. Stay curious, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.